I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order for Wednesday, February 11th, 2026. Thanks to everyone for coming this evening. Sorry for the delay, but I appreciate everyone's indulgence. This is our final evening of budget reviews. I will turn it over to Jen Charneski. Jennifer.
All right. First, we're going to go over our other emergency services. Very quickly, I'll take you through emergency management, and then we'll go into emergency medical service. And we do have Post 53 here to give you some information on their grant request. In emergency management, they're up $16,000, which is 6.1%. The main driver of this is in program expenses. Mark has requested an additional $15,500 so that he can run a full-scale exercise. We have not done that in the time that he's been in the emergency management director role, and it would be a good idea to do so. So I left that in. The only other item I want to call your attention to is part-time. For a couple years now, Mark has been trying to figure out how to staff a deputy emergency management director. Right now, he has a volunteer who's wonderful, but volunteers also have commitments outside of this role, and sometimes their need to travel for their other job conflicts with when Mark is away, and he struggles to have coverage sometimes. He had requested a part-time position. We talked it through. My feeling is that there's not consistent enough work to really bring on a permanent part-time position because it really does ebb and flow. So we're looking at other alternatives, maybe a stipend for an existing employee in another department, or just seeing what other options are out there. But that's on the horizon too, that he does need some kind of guaranteed coverage. So that is all that I have for emergency management.
So Jen, is he looking for coverage during emergencies or just on an ongoing basis?
Like when he's out of town, if he's planning to be on vacation and who the current deputy is, if they have to travel for work, then the town is left without somebody here on site. And in the event that something happens, he likes knowing that there's coverage when he's away. So that was the biggest thing. The other is some additional help during an emergency. Volunteers absolutely there, but you know, whenever they're here, it's great, but that, you know, the fact that they're beholden to other responsibilities in their life does make it challenging. Okay, so the emergency medical services. This is actually an interesting budget because Post 53, as you know, provides volunteer ambulance services, but for several years we have contracted with Stanford EMS, and that's this professional services line. They provide advanced life support. We have a contract with them, and it does go up every year. We just renegotiated it for the current year. So we know it's a couple-year contract, so we know what the increase is for fiscal 27. Based on call volume, we have been responsible. The billings for all of the transports have been covering a very significant portion of our commitment to SEMS last year and through the current year. So we're bringing that down a little bit. If we continued, the $8,395 is 1 quarter payment to SEMS when you see the year to date through December. We haven't gotten the second billing yet. So if we were to continue on that trend against next year's contract amount, it would be about $72,000. So we are requesting $75,000 in the current, in fiscal 27. If we see a couple more years of it drawing down more, we'd probably be more comfortable continuing to cut that, but we don't have much in terms of history showing that it's going down.
Fiscal year 25 seems
It was
crazy
incredibly low. Yes, it was
Yeah.
a huge drop, and that was driven by call volume.
so less call volume and more people billing.
Higher call volume.
Right.
More transports, so
Right.
billed more, received more revenue that went
Right.
towards SEMS to
Got it,
offset our
okay.
costs.
Okay, and those revenues directly offset the cost, which is why
Right.
it's not in the revenue line.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, those go directly to SEMS, and then SEMS just bills us the difference on a quarterly basis. There's a couple of small items that we've reassessed because they weren't being used. Emergency communications is our contract with CMed for dispatching. And actually, I looked back, there's now a credit that we can apply to that, and so that number can come down. I think it's about $6,700. We'll go over that in the wrap-up. And then the last number that you see is grants for Post 53. $360,000. This is a new request that we haven't had in the past, but John and I met with the Post 53 team a few times, supported it and put it in the budget, and have them here to walk you through their request.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thanks everyone for your time. It sounds like a busy couple of nights, so we appreciate you carving out some time for us. I'm Jeff Montero. I run the finance committee for Post. I'm a board member and I'm a former Postie as well when I was in high school. I'm joined by Peter Ostberg, who is the chairman of the board, and Joe Larchevek, who's our full-time executive director and board member. We sent some pre-read materials. I think the thrust of those is we want to make sure everyone realizes just how unique Post 53 is. And also, it really operates at a best-in-class service. We've done comparisons, we've done surveys, we've done consultations, and certainly the town of Darien is getting a great service relative to its neighboring towns of similar size and population. I think why we're here today is that we're at a bit of an inflection point. The demand for our services has certainly gone up. It's at roughly 2,000 calls per year, which is an increase from roughly 1,600 to 1,700 per year pre-COVID. We ascribe that probably to an increase in population post-COVID, increased activity, but certainly it's gone up. The expenses, as we've all seen, inflation has caused our expenses to go up as well, just to keep our headquarters running, the medical expenses, et cetera. Similarly, the increase in demand for calls has placed more burden on our members, the volunteers who staff the ambulances and keep them running. I think we have kind of a fixed component of student members. We're at roughly 84. It's difficult to add meaningfully more numbers of students to carry more call volume. And so what happens is it ends up falling more to the adult advisors. Historically, the adult advisors were the ones that did a lot of the administrative tasks of Post 53. If you think about it, seniors in high school, they change over every year. You can't retrain someone to do the budget, to do accounting, to do all the things. You need an adult advisor, some consistency to do that. And I think what we found is that the increased call volume, the increased burden falling on the adult advisors, we thought it was more important to get them out in the ambulance, helping patients rather than in an office doing administrative work. And so we've started to add professional services to shoulder that burden. In recent years, we've brought on Joe many years ago he was seconded to us from SEMS. We'll talk a little bit about how that's changed in the last year. We have an accountant who's an hourly part of our team, and then we've recently brought on marketing support, and then we also have a new technical maintenance and repair person to help shoulder the burden. I think where we are today is that for many years we've been operating at an operating deficit of roughly $200,000 per year. Our primary funding sources were events like the food fair. We do CPR training. We generate some revenue from that. We do an annual appeal at the end of the year. And then the balance of it was really funded by our endowment, Friends of Post 53. We're very fortunate that we have an endowment of roughly $10 million. But the purpose of the endowment is really to support the headquarters. They own the headquarters. They give us rent-free. They donate the rent to us, better said. And the purpose of that capital is to help us do maintenance on the facility. It is a roughly 40-year-old facility. It requires new roofs, new drainage, new all sorts of stuff. We had to expand it roughly 20 years ago as well to accommodate the increased call volume. So that capital, which was funding a deficit of roughly $200,000+ per year, we don't think we can continue to draw upon. And that's why we're here today. And we'll go through the numbers in a second. But that's why we're at an inflection point. We have increased demand for services. We've had to call in paid support professional services to help manage the operation to make sure it remains best in class. We're concerned about an increase in call volume going forward, making this model unsustainable where we continue to fund an operating deficit with our friends at Post. And that's why we're here today. So maybe, unless there's any questions on the background as to why you're here, we can talk through a little bit of the, maybe I'll pause just one moment on our model. On page 7, if you could pull that up.
Sure. Next one, yep.
Yeah, so we did meet with the surrounding towns. The ambulance services across the country it's all very unique to each town. If you have a hospital service, sometimes the hospital in your city, sometimes they manage it, sometimes it's a for-hire business, sometimes it's run by police or fire. In our surrounding area, these are the ones that are most comparable, Weston, Wilton, Westport, and New Canaan. They're all roughly the same size, population-wise, and square miles of town. Darien is very unique. We evaluated whether it made sense to charge for our service to solve this operating deficit. I think it's long been a volunteer organization where we didn't bill for our services, and we thought that was important to maintain. It was in keeping with the Post legacy, and we didn't really want to challenge that. We don't have town funding, where you can see several of our peers do, and we primarily fund ourselves through fundraising. I think we engaged Harvard Business School. They have a community group that does this pro bono to evaluate our model, and this was really, they made many recommendations which we put into place. I think this was the one that was most impactful to us, is really questioning the sustainability of our current model. With that, page 8. So maybe I'll start with, you can see on the top here, revenue, over the past few years has grown at roughly 7%. I'd say what we've recently done is we've hired marketing professional people to help us increase this. You can see that they started halfway through 2025 and drove a meaningful improvement in our fundraising, which we're very pleased with what happened there. It certainly paid for themselves. That costs money. It's hourly support, as we talked about. And so we're hoping to continue to improve that. But the main line item on here I'd point towards is paid support operations. So that's the primary line item that we're asking the town to help us with via the grant. As I said, that is the substantial majority of it is the salary for our executive director. The reason that increased halfway through the year, maybe Joe, you could explain a little bit of what happened with SEMS and why you're with us full time now.
Certainly. So as Jeff mentioned, I was sort of an executive on lease to post since 2018. I maintained a connection with Stanford EMS where I did about 85% of my time at Post 53, and I owed 15% to Stanford. I were there for 30 plus years. So come the summer of this year, they notified me that they had some leadership changes and they were going to be pulling me back to Stanford to take over the assistant chief's role. And at which point, I notified Post. Even though I was only at Post for 5-6 years, I've had a long relationship with Post, really since the mid-90s, and really sort of fell in love with the kids and the adults and how the organization works, and I really do think it delivers first-rate service. So I was very gracious and happy when the board came forward and says, we'd like to see what we can do to retain you, and they were able to do that. So I resigned from SEMS in October 1st, and since then have been an employee at Post.
So that's one of the main changes over the last year that contributes to that 361 in the budget for this coming year. I'd say if you were to add up the 2026 budget line here, you would get our total expenses. So that's the total expenses of 963, and then our non-ambulance CapEx of 245. So we have to invest in radios, new training dummies, which are all at the end of their useful life. And so in this year, we see a total funding need of 1.2 million. And then when we think about the various sources, on the right side, you can see from our revenue and our fundraising, we anticipate raising 560,000. The Friends of Post, we will continue to contribute some amount. So right now we're showing it at 289. Of course, that may fluctuate up if our expenses go up. But we think that's a more sustainable funding amount, keeping it at that percentage of our total balance. And then what we're asking is for a grant from the town for 360,000. So that would be roughly a 30% of the budget need funded by the town. I would note this excludes our volunteer hours. Our auditor puts a number on it. That's roughly 2 million that the members of Post are donating, and then the rent on Post 3 that the Friends of Post is donating is also 230,000. So we exclude that from the figures, but that's the background on the request. I would note SEMS is, because this came up earlier, is roughly 30% of our calls that SEMS is called to, so they're not on all of them. And then just for your reference, right now we have 4 calls in Darien. So all 3 ambulances are out. We have 3 ambulances. The third one gets called out roughly twice a month. So it's good that we have one. And when we don't, SEMS is there responding to it as we speak.
With this, well, a number of questions. If we were to do this and give this grant, then would there be an expectation of some sort of level of grant from the town each year? Is this a temporary Band-Aid, or are you seeking a change in the nature of the relationship?
I think we suspect it might be a change in the nature of the relationship going forward, but we recognize it's a big number. I think we're just trying to be responsible with the funding model, because we don't want to find ourselves, unprepared for what the future may hold, given all the changes going on in town.
And with this grant money, and I apologize if I misread or didn't understand some of the presentation, which was excellent. Will these be administrative help that is hired on a sort of per diem basis, or are these kind of employees, or what exactly are we doing here?
So they'll be employees. We'll have, as I said, Joe's is salary, so that'll go up. It's historically gone up close to inflation during his time at SEMS. We have 3 other roles. One is an accountant, which is hourly. They've given us a budget for what they use on an annual basis to do our audit. And then we have an IT professional that helps us with managing all the IT issues that we have in the building and with our operations. And then we have repair and maintenance. Historically, we've used auto shops to help fix the ambulances, and that's not always cost efficient, nor is it timely. And so we want someone on staff, and we found someone great and have hired them to take care of the ambulances and the building so that we can keep it operating. That last one will be hourly as well, sorry.
So the paid support that we're envisioning with this grant is really to cover the personnel costs of those 4 individuals.
That's right.
Correct. And it might be worth noting that we've hired the 2 marketing individuals we've excluded from the request, because we figure that's more of a fundraising role at Post 53, so they hopefully will pay for themselves, which it seems like they did this year. So I think to John's point of what Jeff said, really we're asking for the 4 individuals, Joe being the vast majority of it. His contract with SEMS, which I think is a 6-year contract, so that'll be the vast majority. And just to maybe emphasize what Jeff said, I mean, we're clearly asking for this grant this year and expecting that we will come back next year. There will be a slight increase. Joe's contract might go up a little bit. There could be a little bit of fluctuation in our accountant's hours. She's an hourly. She's budgeted 505 hours at $100 an hour. That should be adequate, but that could fluctuate. It might also come down, and we understand that if it does, we will obviously, give the money back to the town if in fact it doesn't cost $360 altogether.
I think we would want to work out a grant agreement on this, which I think is straightforward. One component of that grant agreement could be that beyond a normal inflation or performance-related, say, compensation increase or a decision to hire additional people that would not be marketing, that ostensibly would fall into this, that there would be a dialogue with Jennifer before you guys would do that. So I think that'd be an important constraint that we would have to put on that grant. Questions? Monica?
Yeah, I definitely, I'm looking at the numbers and I'm just trying to understand. So the 361 for operations, that includes the 4 employees at this time that you have in this budget, right?
Correct.
Okay, so that looks like a 55,000 bump. And you show, I understand the marketing, an increase of 30, that makes sense because you have the marketing person, but you have a pretty big drop in revenue. So I'm trying to understand how that.
Between that 25 and 26?
Yeah.
Yes, so I think frankly what happened is I think because this number is current, the most recent number, and I think the budget was developed before we knew in essence how successful the marketing and development team was this year. So it's likely that we would exceed the budgeted number for next year. I mean, we did obviously more this year than the budget is for next year. So there's a little bit of a timing issue. We just got the 2025 numbers literally at our board meeting yesterday. And they actually came in right online with this presentation. So that's why you're seeing that.
So the 2025, your total revenue was 636,000, and you're budgeting 560,000 for this coming year.
Yes.
But you're upping your marketing, so you're obviously trying, so where's the 360 that you're looking for funding from the town? Is that covering some of your non-ambulance?
It's
where's-
covering only the 4 people that we need to run the operation. So if we exceed fundraising, this number, which we're all hopeful we will, it would have no impact on that 360. That 360 would be fixed. That's an expense that is irrespective of how much we raise.
Which has gone up, by the way, because Joe's come on full-time and we've picked up the cost that Stanford was sharing before, correct?
Correct.
So that's
That's
why
right.
we're seeing this larger number now.
Yep.
And
I'm sorry, one other point is that you guys are budgeting and operating on a calendar year basis, correct?
That's right.
So,
Correct.
I don't know if Jennifer, is that something that you would want to stipulate that they'd switch to a fiscal year so that we can manage it with all of our other entities, which are also on a fiscal year basis? Something to think about.
Yeah, I would think about that.
Yeah, we've already briefed our accounting firm that that is likely to happen if this happens, so that should be no problem. We'll have to work through the kind of the stub year and all that good stuff, but
Okay.
they'll do that.
Part of the problem is our annual appeal is around the holidays, and a lot of that comes in January 2026, and so you wouldn't see that in 2025's numbers yet. So that's a little bit of the confusion with being calendar year versus fiscal.
Yeah. Actually, switching to June, it would actually
Would
help.
actually
Would help,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that is
Right.
not a problem.
I'm not opposed to doing this. I see the need for it. Post 53 is an invaluable part of our community. What this does do is fund an enormous part of your operating budget. I mean, the salaries, obviously, but every year. And I think in that respect, I think we may want to change the relationship a little bit and have more, I don't know, if reporting, but you come to all of our meetings, so it's not like you're not here, and so I don't mean to sound like you're, you're here all the time. We know you. I'm just wondering if there should be some kind of way we handle employees as far as benefits. I don't know if I'm.
Like more detailed financial reporting to
Yeah,
actually
I think
see
that's a
the,
fair point. As part of the grant agreement, I think we ought to work out some kind of reporting cadence. I think Jennifer would be the first point of contact on that.
Right.
And that what we would do, and for example, one of the other things we're doing this year is resurrecting, having certain groups come in and talk to us, mainly
Yeah.
board chairs. And I could envision you guys coming in, say the grant goes
be great.
through,
Absolutely.
come in the fall and just see how that process is working and just keeping us up to date in terms of your fundraising, and especially to the extent that there might be a surprise going forward that we would want to know about. Having that kind of regular
Right.
communication up front would help prevent that.
Yeah, I think just to kind of further address the question, there's a lot of variability in how many people get sick and injured in a year. We believe it's going to go up. The one thing in here that we think is fixed, and that's why we presented this as the grant request, is that personnel expense.
Right.
And so that's why we didn't want to have some variable amount, changing all the time. So that's why we solved for this one, and I think we recognize that we may be in here next fall and revisit whether that's the right amount or the right way to think about it.
Go ahead.
well, just as a philosophical matter, and I don't know where I fall in this, but before we commit taxpayer dollars, do we need to talk about whether or not we should insist that there be some level of call charges?
Yeah, that's what I was, you mentioned, Jeff, that Harvard, you did a study, so can you refresh on what the outcome of that was? Because we have sort of a relationship with the library that's, we're a big supporter of the library, the town is, but that's a service that is available to everybody, and your service, and I'm a huge fan of Post, you all know that, but have you looked into some sort of charging, and if you have, why have you decided not to go with that model?
So I can help address that. So we did look deeply into the possibility of charging, and that was one of the things that spurred us to have this sort of strategic conversation with the services around us. One is when you bill for service, you suddenly enter an entirely new level of compliance and oversight requirements. Not that we're not right there to meet them, but we can't. You hear this story a lot of times about soft billing, and we can bill residents at a little easier time than other people. And unfortunately, the rules have tightened on that. So, we would be sending bills to everybody. What Medicare and Medicaid doesn't collect, we would have to have some ability to try to collect beyond that. Now, we don't have to be as aggressive as some others are, but I know from what our accountant Melissa puts in monthly, just to deal with the pass-through of the paramedic billing, which is really about 30% of our volume, that we would need to really increase our in-office staff to handle things like disallowances, reimbursements. We have a third-party biller that handles that paramedic billing on behalf of the town through us, and the amount of labor hours we put in to that is significant. And I think if we suddenly tried to do that volume with all of our calls, all of our transports, I think we would see a significant increase in our office salary to handle that. The other thing too is, and Jeff alluded to this, and the other services sort of back that, their whole relationship with their community sort of changes at that point. And you get somebody who is historically donated generously to post at whatever level they were comfortable with, and then they get 2 or 3 bills in the course of a year, and they're like, well, why am I giving to you when you're charging for your service now? So I think that was all on the plate as we as a board looked at, is this worth changing? We're so unique in how we operate and excellent in what we do, and our relationship with the town and the community has been 55 years in the making. Do we want to do something that's that drastic? So we thought this was a different approach that helped us to sort of fill this gap. I'm not saying it might not be on the table in the future, but it certainly came with some concerns we didn't think we were ready for at the time.
I think part of the calculation would need to be, if you decide to bill, it doesn't mean you collect on those bills. And if by billing you jeopardize the fundraising capacity of what is a very generous town, then you might actually put us in a worse financial situation. So it's hard to quantify, but that was where the board deliberated.
Okay, my last question on that is, and we'll have to, our residents will wonder this. You said you have a $10 million endowment, and you're looking at a $200,000 shortfall every year. So that your endowment, if it does all right in the market, should be able to cover that shortfall. So speak to why you're not tapping your endowment.
So let me address that. So first of all, I think next year is 440, Monica. So because costs have gone up, the deficit is also increasing. So we're projecting roughly 440 next year. Our concern, and part of what we did a couple of years ago, was look at the building. So our challenge is going to be, we have a close to 40-year-old building that is in need of some either work or a complete rebuilding. Friends owns the building, and it's likely that we would lean on Friends to finance a new building. My concern has always been, if we tap that for, we talked to some developers in town. They said it could cost $7 million to rebuild a slightly larger facility. If we tap $7 million from the endowment, we will have no ability to fund even $200,000 to $300,000 a year on a rational basis. The Board of Friends, which I sit on as well, has tentatively agreed to kind of like a 3%-ish draw per year. We need to see how this all goes, and we'll put that in place in writing when we get closer to if this were to happen. So I think that's a reasonable number. We will clearly do a major capital campaign in connection with a new building, and as Jeff said, we happen to live in a very generous town, so maybe that will help us. But I don't think the whole idea with this project was, let us try to put ourselves on a sustainable footing without, leaning on one particular source. And we thought, having the town support this obviously very important service was a reasonable place to go to see if we can get some support.
And the building's not the only potential capital call that the endowment would have, correct?
No, and I was going to respond because, the fluctuation in our annual number is primarily ambulances and flight cars. An ambulance is roughly $300,000. We've gotten really lucky or good the last couple of years that we've had people in town donate the full cost of ambulances. We just received a new one last year.
Which is unbelievable.
It's fantastic, right?
If you're watching, thank you.
Our friends at the fire department don't, we're different, just to mention that.
I can give you one cheap.
The flight cars are, roughly $70,000, and, they have historically been graciously donated by our community, but that's not necessarily going to continue, right? We hope it will, but if all of a sudden we are looking at a couple of ambulances, we're looking at probably, $600,000-$700,000 of expense or investment.
And, I mentioned in my quarterly report, that we're applying to add a 4th ambulance to our fleet. Right now, as Jeff mentioned, there's, 4 calls going on in town, and that's becoming more and more commonplace as our volume increases. So, we've run into issues where we have 1 ambulance that might go out for just preventative maintenance, for a few hours, and that puts us 1 ambulance down. So, we're trying to do things and bolster our capabilities to respond to all the calls that we're able to, making sure we have a reliable fleet, that we have, a backup so we keep 3 ambulances on the road. But right now, our garage holds 3, and if we add a 4th, something's going to be outside. Our fly cars, our quick response vehicles for our supervisors are all housed outside, and that wear and tear as well adds to the maintenance costs that we have to continue on our vehicles. So.
Other questions for these gentlemen?
Thank you.
Marcia, Mike?
Now, my last comment would be that I think the library does a really good job with their reports at the end of the year for us, and it might be good to take a look at that.
We've already met with Kira, and she's been helpful, and I just spoke to Hutch, so I think they're more than willing to help us out. So we will try. We have much less of a staff, by the way, but no, certainly. I mean, we're definitely. I mean, I think we've made great strides in the last couple of years in improving and in our reporting and all that, and we will continue to do so.
Plagiarism is bad if you're in school, but now that we're adults, you should do it shamelessly.
Bring it on.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Benchmarking.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Jennifer.
All right, next up, we have the police, and we have 2 captains as well as Sharon, the facilities coordinator, here to
It's your turn in the
answer
hot seat
questions that you
now.
have. So come on up. A couple weeks ago at your regular Board of Selectmen meeting, there was a transfer on for about $25,000 related to facility repair and maintenance costs that they've incurred in the current year that were unexpected, and part of that discussion was to get an update on the status of it. So Sharon can start off with that. I think it might provide some context for some of the things that you see in their budget. So, all yours, Sharon.
Welcome.
Hi, Sharon.
We're happy you're here.
How are you?
Good.
So I just wanted to kind of, since I've been here, give you a kind of overview of what I found regarding this building. It does have issues, is what I will say.
Just a couple.
And I tried to summarize it in a really sort of general way instead of going into every little issue. The first thing I think is what I call documentation. There are very few documents from the original construction. I think I got some from the engineer today, finally, and I've been trying to get, say, as-built records, et cetera, to know where things are, what things were built, instead of having a centralized, comprehensive, digital set of records, which in 2012 was still possible, although the engineer acts like it was not available at that time. So that's the first thing. Then there's just sort of a knowledge bottleneck is what I would call it. We have contractors, we have DPW, all helping, but on a memory basis, nothing written down, what did you fix, what did you take out, et cetera. And it's not accessible to me or other people who might be working in the building. Then there's just a general vendor oversight issue. Vendors have been on site, we have contracts, but the ability to review their work and understand what we need to plan for the future for preventive maintenance. No clear what I call KPIs, audit trail except for financial, so we obviously have the bills that they sent, but in terms of what they did. Then our strategy has been much more reactive than preventative. So, and then just contract scope. As I reviewed the initial contracts, lots of partial agreements. Some people don't have agreements instead of a kind of comprehensive full spectrum. And a very good example is what happened today. So today, another alarm went off. I had to call somebody. We had to pay an emergency additional over and above the contract fee that I have with them. And so this is an ongoing problem because we have not fully been able to implement this kind of preventive maintenance procedure in here, but also because there are a lot of issues with the building and they have to be rectified for me to even implement a full preventive strategy. So those are the basic things. Regarding the actual $22,000, I have spent this year just in unexpected costs like today's costs. I'm not sure I have the number in this packet, but more than that 22,000 or approximately that 22,000 just in unexpected costs that we have, whether it be an existing contract has 2 visits and now we had to have a 3rd visit, or it's not, we have 2 visits, one in the fall, one in the spring, and I've already had my fall visit and I have to have them come again. I've had 3 CO detectors replaced this year, for example. That's our automated logic team, our building management system. Those 3 detectors are not in their contract. So I had to pay for the detectors and then pay for them to come out and install them. That is an ongoing problem, is that equipment that was either, in this particular case, when Automated Logic took over, they took over from Johnson Controls. Johnson Controls had the system. Automated Logic basically operates on a you call me, you pay me system. Johnson Controls is a much more sort of comprehensive. They handle it from a distance. They can see their equipment from a distance. I've used them a lot because I don't need this to micromanage them. So it was just a different company that took over, and they have a different contractual way of doing business. That being said, they have now given me a contract for next year where they want to do something more comprehensive. It is 4 times the cost of this year's contract. I haven't looked at it yet, but I do find it interesting in terms of like the amount of money. So those are the things that I'm sort of encountering, and we're still in a very much reactive standpoint because there's so many things that are not fixed in the building. And so my process is, first of all, I've introduced an asset management software into the facility where we're tracking all of our maintenance and every repair that we make and every piece of equipment that we buy and how old it is. And then working on contracts, I have been in touch with an attorney so that we strengthen our contracts. And then, of course, I'm out working with the engineers to get all the documentation and now start keeping documentation on what we're doing to the building and where things are. Drawings aren't up to date. Even the architect's drawings are wrong in several places. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, much more work than I expected, to be honest with you. But
I warned you, Sharon. I warned you.
It's like, it's one building. It's like, how much could it be? So I feel like there are some processes in place. As I told Jen, I can't do this without funding. I mean, every time I turn around, there is a cost to bringing someone in. But I do feel very strongly that I need to know the skill set of the personnel who are making repairs in this building at this point. I can't just have someone come and replace a pipe without asking the really hard questions about what this does to other parts of the system. So I am bringing in vendors to do things whereas normally maybe you would have called one of the internal people to do certain things. I really need to look at these systems and have someone who's accountable, someone who gives me a warranty for the parts that they install, et cetera, and have some accountability so that we can start to get a handle on what is going wrong here.
Could you talk a little bit about this, from what you're describing, there's some paperwork and documentation deficiencies, there's the slow and steady addressing of these problems and getting support from vendors to actually do some correctives. One thing you haven't talked about is whether you're anticipating any kind of significant capital expenditures for major systems replacements, in the sense that, look, I could have a contractor come in and tweak this and repair it, or in some cases you might have hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in capital expenditures to replace systems that simply are either beyond their service life or we shouldn't be spending repair money on. Do you have a go forward or look ahead as to any of that you could warn us about that you're seeing?
I do. I would say that there are, just documents in my 6-year plan, there are 3 majors that are coming online. So replacing the rooftop units. The rooftop units are 12 years old, probably closer to 13. Normally, the expected life is anywhere from 15 to 20, but this is a 24-hour building. They run constantly. I've repaired, just since I've been here, we've replaced a compressor, which is a major component in a rooftop unit. And they have replaced an entire unit that's only 5 years old. So it was replaced, my understanding, about 3 or 4 years ago. So it was only 9 or 10 years old when it was replaced. So
and I'm sorry, is that due in your judgment to an inadequate maintenance program, or what was the cause of something like that?
So I hate to use the term, the word inadequate. I can't really speak to the maintenance that was been done. What I can tell you is that from the contracts I've seen and the maintenance that I've seen, our maintenance hasn't been comprehensive enough. We haven't asked and documented exactly what the problems were that we were trying to address, and then how we were meeting those issues and problems. I don't have any documentation, for example, on why that RTU was replaced. I know it was broken.
So let me
but I don't.
Historically, and I'm sure you're familiar with the background of our building and all the issues we've been experiencing and we continue to experience. And Ally could attest to this as well, but we were always very reactive. You had a captain, a police officer in charge of essentially what Sharon's doing right now, lacking the training and knowledge, and a lot of the responsibilities with maintaining a building, especially a police department operational 24/7. So we relied heavily on support from DPW, which we're very thankful for, and kind of relied on their skill set, their expertise to identify issues and make sure the repairs are done properly. And it's just, over time, it's proven to not be effective, and not blaming them. It's just, I don't think they had the time and the manpower to keep up with the demands of our building. So for a while, we just essentially been putting Band-Aids on some repairs.
And they're significant. I mean, their efforts have been very, very helpful. But at some point, you have to know when you need to call in an outside professional to come in and really put together a plan and how things are going to go, and have some responsibility for the parts that you're putting in, understand how old those parts are, keep track of them, etc. But back to your question, so that number 1 is replacing the RTUs on the roof. I think that given the age of certain ones of them, as well, even the one that's only 5 years old, just had a new fan motor installed about 4 months ago.
Is there a design issue with this? And should we be really looking at completely redoing the entire department? I mean, we just keep funneling money to these
The amount of money
Band-Aids.
spent on a capital
that-
basis, on an ongoing basis for the repairs.
Right? Like, we could have
is
built a whole
millions
new
of dollars.
building by
And
this
it's
point.
not
Sorry,
anyone's fault.
this is just,
No,
this
no,
is
no.
like,
And it's
the
not-
$1 million
building.
question in the room.
I
It's the
have to
elephant.
tell
This
you,
is before
it-
you guys even came on, like, it's crazy.
It's a very good question. And honestly, I will say, I had a back and forth, and I don't think he likes me very much anymore, with the architect who did the building. But because I feel like the contract was deficient, and the oversight was woeful, in my opinion. For this construction, what he told me is that each vendor was responsible for having oversight over their work. I've never, ever allowed a vendor to qual their own work. The contract reads that they only had to keep the documentation. I was asking him for documentation for 6 years. 6 years doesn't even meet the state of Connecticut requirement for repose of documents. So I feel as though what you really needed was to bring in a professional, a JLL, who could monitor the construction and provide the support. I will say that the issue with the building is an engineering issue. It's a lot of mechanical, electrical, plumbing issues, of which I have a lot. And my understanding, and I have no information about this, is that a large sum of money was given back to the town. And I think that whenever I have presented to my prior management any sort of give back of a budget that I've created, it comes with an extensive explanation of where I'm getting that money from. And given the amount of money I'm told was given back, it didn't come out of like the paint of the building. It came out of your mechanical systems, and that's a problem. And so the engineer tells me that he originally designed what's called a heat exchanger and a chiller for this building, and that's really what this building needed.
So that raises, I just want to get to this operative point that's being made here. So we can go through and get to regular order on this, which you've very expertly described, and we're thankful for that. But there gets to be this larger question of, okay, if it's going to take this kind of capital budget to seriously get this building in order, I think at some level you got to say, all right, do we just drop this building and start over?
You
I'm
have
not saying,
to study
I'm not
that.
saying, I'm not saying, well, but that's a decision that this board would have to make.
Right.
But what I don't want to do is I don't want to just sort of reflexively go through the process and say, all right, let me just take 5 years, we'll straighten this out, replace this, do that, fix this. It's just this constant thing versus over the long term, if we're talking about having a building that will last a generation or more,
Right.
Is the right answer to come in and get this, drop the building and competently rebuild this building where we don't have these problems again. Because this is not our first rodeo in terms of listening to problems like this. You're the first person who's brought light and clarity to it, and I applaud you for that. But despite your expertise, it's not sounding like a happy story.
It's a difficult story. That's not my only issue.
Well,
Yeah.
and the amount of
And
time
I
and
feel like you're
energy
just scratching
that has
the
been
surface.
spent
Yeah.
by your department over the years,
I'm
is a
sorry.
phenomenal amount of time and energy that has been spent by your department over the past.
Right.
I mean, since they've gotten the keys to the building, it's been a problem.
Yeah.
Day one.
Yeah.
Right.
It has nothing to do with everyone in your building. It has
No.
to do with the design, and for years you've been spending so much time and energy trying to deal with this.
Everyone here has
And it's
been,
an enormous amount of
And
money that has been requested, and you're trying to keep your building running. It's not,
Right.
you guys aren't doing anything wrong. We're just, I think, marveling at the amount that has been spent, and,
Well,
these huge.
And they're so uncomfortable.
Well, you're clearly uncomfortable with this
Mr.
building. To your point, it looks like the prospect for spending money could continue for quite a
Oh,
while.
I-
And we're talking
I don't
non-trivial
think she
dollars.
sees an end.
I
Probably.
have to tell you, I've got 3 big issues that are substantial,
So-
at
so-
least.
So the question is,
That doesn't even count the little issues that they haven't had a kitchen sink for the last 3 days because,
if it were your money and you were trying to make a decision versus continue down this path of trying to get this building to regular order, that you as a professional would say, we're doing this right? Or would you say, stop the bleeding, we need to just start to make plans to just replace this entire thing and get it right? And if I look at it with a very long term, in your judgment, as a professional, I'd say, yeah, I might go that direction. Because it's okay if you say, no, you don't really have to take down the building, but I think collectively, we'd have to have comfort in your professional assessment
Right.
that says, look, I think I can manage this, and that net, you're still better off keeping the building. That's a decision I think we need to take on as a board and think about, and we may need to have multiple iterations with you, but I'm just planting the seed that we may need to think about that.
Well, and given the capital plan, I mean, it's about $500,000 this year, right? And you've got in the next few years, you know, another several $100,000 that will appear in addition to the unseen ones, right?
That's right.
Well, that was
That's right.
the
And-
fact that even if the building were fixed, I think in terms of police professionals and captains, even if we're working fine, I still think there's a lot you don't like about that building.
Well, just from a standpoint, correct me if I'm wrong, where's the growth? So they put an entire third floor of equipment in the third floor is all my HVAC equipment. There's no room for growth. We have limited parking. So it has some constraints already, right?
And you're burning your
Yes.
air conditioning units every 7 years.
Yeah. And
Why is that?
So that's why I bring this up, because it's not just about the rampant mechanical difficulties that again, I feel like you're just scratching the surface.
Right.
But it's all these other design deficiencies that really prevent the department from functioning the way it's supposed
Right.
to, even if there were none of these problems.
Right.
And my question is it better to start this over again and take all these capital dollars that we're talking about and repurpose them to getting this right? And look, I'm just asking the question. I don't have enough facts or having all this straightened out in my head. And we've had a lot of capital expenditures lately, and
I think
I hate
it's
to be
worth
bringing this up,
studying, certainly.
but-
I would
but
hate
I-
to sit
I-
here.
This
I
is not
think-
the first time that we've had this conversation as a theoretical.
yeah, it's, but now we've got
Susan here, yes.
Superstar,
We appreciate it.
Well,
which we appreciate. Maybe
I'd
we need
prefer to
have a
give you like real data that you could look at and say, this makes sense, but
Would you be in a position to work with the captains and others to help us actually put pen to paper and come up with this either-or analysis?
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
I think we should have that discussion.
Okay.
It does suggest that some of these capital dollars that are building related, if we want to go through that process, which may take multiple months to kind of fully get our minds around, we might want to delay some of that stuff if we think that's at all a possible outcome.
My recommendation would be that the rooftop AC condenser units, we hold off on those, don't appropriate them, and instead appropriate some study money. I would defer to you, Sharon, on the AHU ductwork and pulley replacement, if those are so immediate that they need to be, done so that we can continue working in that building until something else is decided, then we should leave those in. But I think if we do the study and it comes back and it finds, nope, you should do repairs, it's not worth knocking the place down, let's do the repairs, then we can go back through the full appropriation process. And if we want to do the rooftop AC appropriation at that point, after we've done the study, we could do it that way.
Off cycle.
I think that given,
But it has
We need a
been
couple weeks.
introduced in the budget process, so it meets that requirement.
I just want to note for the record that the captains would be excellent poker players. 'Cause I'm watching and she's talking
No, Ally's not.
about doing a building. But Captain Hastrani would say, well, maybe put off the units.
You had winning hands until then, and then,
I'm just thinking what the summer's gonna look like. And
I was about
what
to
the
say.
temperature's gonna be.
I
'cause
worry about the
Every
summer.
summer,
Yeah.
we experience
No.
issues.
We don't want you uncomfortable. I think look,
Right.
it's February.
Right.
We need to think about long-term, right?
Right.
There have been in the past 5 years some significant financial outlays, if you
Right.
add them all up, little and small.
Yeah, I did a historical, just on the budget. I wasn't able to do everything, but it is quite staggering, like the difference between
It's a
what you're
stunning
actually
amount of money.
spending and the budget that.
Well, I would also think
Goes.
rooftop units are also transferable.
That was gonna be my question.
If you did put them on, it's not, they still have a life of 15 years. You
Or
could
does that
move them
commit us
new-
to a particular system
I don't
in
know.
the new building?
So the interesting thing about the rooftop the rooftop units actually pose a problem for me because as of January 2026, new refrigerant is required, and so even changing out the rooftop units may require me doing work on the actual air handlers in the building because of this new refrigerant. Causes a huge problem we're still working through with Carrier on how much that could impact me and what we can or cannot do. It's anything from changing a coil to maybe some major component. We've kind of like drilled down to maybe just changing a coil out. But so the rooftop units, I personally think we could go either way. The ductwork, I'm a little more concerned about. The problem with the design is I see it, and please know that the engineer, if he agrees with me, he will not say it. We are depending right now on every small unit in the ductwork to try and cool this building, which is the problem. Revamping the ductwork, we would cool it up in the penthouse and then send it through, and the VAVs would do a secondary cool on this air. And that's the problem. The VAVs are too small to remove the amount of humidity that's coming in through this building. In addition, there's a giant hole in the ductwork up in the penthouse that no one noticed. So,
Well, someone did notice, and there was an attempt to.
well, they tried to patch it and then blew off, I guess. They tried to duct tape it, I guess, or something.
Could you give some thought to how you would help us answer this question and what consultants or other professionals that you might hire to conduct a study, to Jennifer's point, and
Yeah.
in the next week or so to
I
think about that?
a similar list to what I gave you for ADA to help us do the study. I would probably want to run the numbers, just estimate them myself, and then do a secondary review with an outside third party to
Because
double check.
Well, because there's two sets of numbers, right? There's the set of numbers that says to get this building
That's right.
to where it is good for the next 25 years, requires X over Y period of time.
Right.
And then to actually drop it and build
Rethink
new, that costs Y, plus the benefits you get from having the building designed by these two, right? To where it gets you the facility that you
Exactly.
really want.
Exactly.
Question, how long have you been in this role?
In this role?
Yeah.
Since March of last year.
March of last year.
Do you feel like you have your arms then? You've been in there a year. Do you feel like you have your arms around like some of the problems and you feel like a year's a good amount of time to understand kind of everything?
Yeah, I
like that?
do.
Okay.
I do.
Good. Great.
There's a new problem that I wasn't expecting. I probably should have anticipated it, but yeah,
Good.
over the big issues in the building.
Good.
I
Okay.
think fortunately, there's just not much more that could be wrong with it. Actually, I mean, between the I know. But
The chances of you being
there's
scared.
plumbing, there's HVAC, short of structural issues.
Okay. I'm going.
So at this point, the chances of you being scared away are low.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's true. Yeah.
She's not going.
No.
We won't allow that.
It's very helpful to work with really nice people.
Well,
It's probably my first
I think I can speak
experience
for
with-
everybody. We really appreciate
Yes.
your presence here, your
Thank you.
professional and expertise that you're bringing to bear, and just the clarity that you've brought to this presentation. It's the first time I've certainly heard it in this depth, and I just want you to know I really appreciate it. That's first rate. Great. What's next?
Well, since we're on capital, why don't we go through capital?
Okay.
And then there are a couple things, as Sharon was talking about, contracts and that sort of thing, that's where we'll see some impact in the operating budget, but
Okay,
we're here, we'll go through it.
please.
First off, small capital, $5,000 for everybody. Then their vehicle replacement. This is a combination of 2 patrol vehicles. Switching from Fords to the Chevy Tahoe is where they want to go. The Tahoes have been gaining popularity in the police community. They have a larger interior, more cargo area. Locally, New Canaan, Greenwich, Danbury, Norwalk, Connecticut State Police, Westport, and Fairfield are moving over to Tahoes. And these additional space is really important for officer comfort on the long shifts, providing adequate room for arrestees when they're being transported. And another really important thing is they're carrying more and more equipment, and they need the larger cargo space. So the 249 is made up of a request of $163,000 for the 2 patrol vehicles, as well as about $84,000 for the replacement of administrative vehicle. The only thing I did not ask you is, do you know how old the administrative vehicle is?
Admin vehicles?
Yeah.
Lifespan's typically 8 to 10 years.
Right, so they're not on the 3-year.
No, even
replacement schedule.
even one of the patrol vehicles that we're requesting, which would be Unit 20 or supervisor vehicle, that one typically has a longer lifespan as well. So that one we could probably get, instead of a 3-year rotation, you're looking at at least an additional 2 years, possibly 3 or 4. So
That's nice.
that could be up to 6 years.
Patrol rifles, this has been an ongoing program for several years. They're continuing on the program to issue each individual officer their own rifle, similar to how they each have their own pistol, taser, portable radio, and body camera. So this continues on through fiscal 30. And the rifles have a 15-year useful life. Portable radio replacement for $53,000. Their current fleet of radios is approaching end of the manufacturer's warranty. They're approximately 8 years old. Radios are obviously essential to daily operations in the department. So it's really important that they can maintain functioning portable radios for their own operations to ensure the safety of their officers and for interoperability. So we started talking about the ductwork, the pulley replacement, and the rooftop units. I just want to go over those. We'll have to make a decision what we want to do with them, but for $49,233 is the air handler unit ductwork. This is what Sharon was talking about, where the current system incorporates variable air volume boxes for dehumidification. They're undersized. They're not doing the job. So this project would implement a dedicated outdoor air treatment center system, and it would centralize mixing and conditioning, bring in outdoor air and combine it with returned air, and it would be combined, pre-cooled, and aggressively dehumidified.
Does that make sense? So basically, upstairs in the penthouse is the ductwork for an air handler. Right now, instead of the air handler cooling the air at that unit upstairs, which is very large, we usually have what's called a mixing station in the unit itself, and it cools the air there. What it's doing is it's sending the air through the ductwork where we have VAVs at periodic locations throughout the building. Those are much smaller units, and they are tasked with taking the humidity out of the air and doing the additional cooling. It's just never been my experience that they were powerful enough to do that. And so...
How big is this building? What's the square footage?
It's deep.
No, you don't know?
It doesn't
Oh,
look
I
big.
think our
30,
square
30,
footage is 40, over a little over 47,500,
yeah.
I believe.
Yeah,
It's
when you
like
face the building, it doesn't look
It
big.
doesn't
Yeah.
look
Fifty-ish
that, it
thousand.
looks
Yeah.
small in the front, but it's
50,000.
deep.
Yeah, it just,
Yeah.
okay.
So on this one, the financial impact is estimated savings from fewer service calls. It could range from $8,000 to $10,000. We'd have a decreased reliance on those emergency and unexpected calls. There's also the potential for a reduction in energy consumption, but can't really quantify that.
Hey, Jen, on this one, do you have funds there to fix the hole in the ductwork?
Yeah.
Is that,
I
seriously,
do.
is that included in this at all somewhere?
Yeah. No,
Jen, can you explain why, if the request was 257, you have 465?
We haven't gotten to that one yet.
Sorry.
You're reading ahead. It's coming soon, though.
Sorry.
The AHU pulley for $9,503. This is a pulley assembly that is misaligned, and there's been physical damage, inadequate maintenance, component warping. So the components are not adjustable; they're unsalvageable, and the pulley motor must be replaced. The pulley and motor must be replaced as a single unit to restore proper function and alignment.
yeah.
This is another one where we could potentially save as a result of reduced service calls. It's about $1,000 per call, but you can definitely explain it better than I can.
This is a very small thing in the scheme of things. The pulley is misaligned, so we are replacing the belts inside the air handling unit on an unusually regular basis, almost monthly. It's stripping the belts, and then I have to order some more. So it's just something Carrier noticed when they came out to do their preventive maintenance, that I couldn't figure out why I was replacing belts in this one unit on such a regular basis. Usually a belt should last me at least 6 months, if not a year, in a properly functioning unit. We're literally like monthly changing these out.
And you're like running a fireplace in there?
Yeah, I know.
Is it the computers that's like burning
Right.
up? Like
See,
what?
This is
Why is it calling
this
for
is
so
the
much
maintenance
more? Yeah.
issue with the KPIs that I was talking about.
Okay.
Is sort of documenting what were they actually doing during their maintenance calls. I will tell you, for example, Carrier also had the boilers under their contract. Carrier doesn't do boilers. Yeah, so I've tried to find out what they were doing, because our boiler, we had a new boiler company come in this year, and what we found inside the boiler was startling. It was full of sludge.
It looked like it was never maintained. Since
Never
it was
maintained. Clearly never
installed.
maintained.
Wow.
Yeah. So, so that's a small. It will be helpful, I think, towards functionality, obviously, but it's in the scheme of things, it's just a repair.
Asbestos in those boilers?
Asbestos? No.
Oh,
No.
that's good.
Yeah. No. 2012.
See, that's one thing you
well,
guys don't have.
I actually, so let's not go on wood here. So technically,
Now she's going wood.
I'm able to say, like, 2012, there's no way there's asbestos, but given this building, I haven't actually had anything tested, so, but there shouldn't be.
Rooftop AC condenser units. So they have 4 of them. The department originally requested to replace 2. That's the $257,000 that you see. I did ask Sharon if there was any savings to be had if we replaced all 4, because she did say that if replacing all 4 at the same time would be better for maintenance. I believe it alleviates strain from having the 2 different types.
Yeah, so the one thing about this building is I have so much equipment that's like different years and different, even batteries, like the issue today, one battery is from March of last year and the other battery is from like 3 years ago. It's very hard to manage and keep things running properly when everything is is sort of uncoordinated that way. But so Jen's question was, could there be a savings? And the answer is yes, because we had to lift a compressor up 3 months ago for one of the condenser units. I had to rent a crane for that. The part is too heavy to lift, to walk up the stairs or even to put in the elevator. But one crane would lift all the components for probably about the same price and the same amount of time they were there.
Yeah, so
Because-
I was going to say, what Sharon worked up was a pretty thorough estimate. Again, not sure what the refrigerant issue is going to bring.
Yeah.
But if we do all 4 at the same time, as opposed to 2 one year and 2 another year, we save about $50,000. So pre this whole discussion, that was my recommendation, to take advantage of that savings, get the better efficiency with the maintenance. That's why you see 465 instead of the 257. Makes sense. And then their final request is for a storage shed for their traffic equipment. Right now, that's stored outside. It's external, lacks proper organization, it's unsightly, there's safety risks. So what they are looking to do is have a dedicated, secure, a couple of storage units to put this equipment in. They did look at maybe doing some exterior shelving in the current location, but that would take up part of the sidewalk, create another potential hazard. So the choice is to put in some sheds. And the other one the other request that they have is related to ADA. So they have a few things in the out years, but in the budget year, they're requesting $56,200 for removing the sidewall in the lobby. The ADA report that we received noted that there's a deficiency in the public library, and the primary service window into the records office is too high. They did look at lowering that window, but it's really cost prohibitive. And the alternative is to remove a sidewall in that area that would allow access to an existing ADA compliant window into the records room. So what they're looking to do is remove that wall, make it another service area, so they'll actually have 2 windows, one of which will be ADA compliant.
Which we have now. So we have one window that's too high, and then you walk through a door into a small room, and there's a ADA compliant window in there. The problem is the room itself isn't ADA compliant. The room's only 4 feet.
And we don't even know the intended purpose
We don't
of this
know
room
the-
either,
right.
because it's not
It doesn't
used.
make any sense. So it's only 4 feet wide. I don't know how it even got built this way.
Like I said,
We know how John feels. Jack, start thinking. He's making, yeah.
You're building it already, you got your land.
He's got some numbers.
Blueprints over there?
I will tell you, when we were looking at schools, somebody.
I got yelled at for people not talking by the microphone. So.
This is my fault, sorry.
Jack Davis, a number of years ago, somebody told me while we were looking at what schools we had to replace, the number 1 building to be knocked down and rebuilt was the police department.
Really?
Even more than Ox Ridge,
Yeah.
which was a nightmare, and we knocked that down.
There you go.
Anyway,
Yeah.
how long do you think it would take to put together a plan to come up with the fix versus rebuild analysis that we need to look at?
I would love to have like 6 weeks to 2 months, something like that.
Okay.
I mean,
Has anybody gone
I'd
to
like
the
to have a
new one?
consultant.
What's that?
Has anybody seen the new police department in New Canaan? I mean, they just did this, right? Like, that's,
Very nice.
it's
Do-
beautiful. Yeah?
I
haven't.
I
mean, it's
haven't
worth go-
been,
Like, what was
And
their
that's-
reasons for doing it? Were
but
they in the
is it the
same
same
issues?
people that built ours?
That's my problem.
It
That's-
is?
It
I
is.
believe so.
Wow, okay.
They're
Well,
building all over
But
the
that
place.
building, it wasn't a brand new building. It was just like this huge addition that was put on the back. And it was marrying these 2 systems. It never worked.
Pretty similar,
If we
yeah,
do-
our building.
If we do this,
But
I'm
they
not,
also built Stanford, and an officer I ran into in Stanford said that they have similar problems. I think that there are some, well, in my opinion, I probably would look to other.
Yeah.
if we rebuild
design
this, you
teams.
can keep the little green light outside and the flags, and maybe the plaques, and that's it. Everything else burned. Okay. So this might need to be a transfer within this year to fund a
But
state.
it's, but I'd like time to go look at some of these other facilities and see
For sure.
who worked on them, so I could at least document for you. I don't know that they did New Canaan, but maybe they did, I don't know.
Okay.
Timing-wise,
I
the Board of Finance budget vote is 8 weeks from tomorrow. So one option is to give it some time and let some of these decisions occur at the Board of Finance level when we have more information. Or you can make some changes now, make some decisions now, and those can always be changed if we have more information at Board of Finance
I
level.
mean, there's no reason to go through and start cutting and changing and doing all that.
Well,
My
you have
vote,
to.
my vote would be just leave it as budgeted, and let's work really hard to get more information as to what we might do next, and leave the Board of Finance, or even the RTM, if it's
Yeah.
later than that, let you guys cut it if we decide to go another route.
Yeah, we always have until May to adjust anything
For sure.
from the Board of Finance.
Yeah, so all the more reason to make sure we leave stuff in, because if it
Yeah,
does come to that,
completely.
our
But that-
team can't put it
But
back
that does
in.
mean that collectively, the 4 of you start to think about how would we quickly, but with thoroughness, pull together an effort to help us make this fix versus tear down and rebuild decision, which I think we owe it to everybody to come to that perspective.
The only question I would have is on the 2 versus 4 units for the roof, is if we go ahead with this, Is that only because of cost savings, or do the other two actually need to be replaced as well?
So I would say, given the age and the amount of use that they've gotten, they all need to be replaced. Some just, two of them are more needy than the others. But in general, just because of the amount of use. So they run 24/7 for the most part throughout the year because the boilers and the air handlers are integrated in providing heat and air in a certain way. So they're just overburdened.
And they all work together at the same time, so they all work as hard as each other.
Yeah, so obviously the condensers aren't on as much in the winter, but they run really heavily in the summer. The boilers run 365, basically. They provide the water that in the summer for the air handlers, and so they're running all day long.
And the department had originally requested 2 be replaced in 27 and 2 in 28, so I pulled the 2 from 28 forward to 27.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Because isn't the fire department looking for these two?
This building. And that was actually something that we had talked about and thought, if everything.
Hey, if we buy
coordinated,
6,
if the
can we
crane is
get a
down
discount?
here.
And that's
We
true,
moved the
we
two.
probably would, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. We would get a discount for 4. I believe that the units you have here run on steam.
Yeah, I
is
think
my
they're
understanding.
different, but
They're
they're
different.
So the units themselves we might not get, but.
We would still work to get a discount.
Yeah,
even
and
though
see if
they're
we can
different.
coordinate.
Yeah, because
crane
we'd be
time and-
buying
Right.
everything at a similar time, so.
Should we move on to operating?
We can absolutely do that.
We could spend all night on
There's a
here.
dead horse here, let's not go into.
Operating, so the total increase is 262,000, which is 2.6%, which is wonderful, and they have done a fabulous job. But I do want to say part of the reason why that is so low is because we have the police union salary increase budgeted in the salary contingency. So you won't, in some of their divisions, you won't see a lot of increase in full-time salaries because the contract is expiring. The only thing that we did budget for on those in this department is if someone is receiving a step increase, we can account for that, but any gross wage increases in the salary contingency. So police administration is up 20,485, 2.1%. It's really status quo. Looking down the line, this is one that's actually a larger percent because they only, in their salary account, they only have 1 PD union position. The others are non-represented, and there's a town hall union employee. Other than that, all of their accounts in here are minimal change and kind of business as usual. Investigative and youth is an increase of $8,000, just 0.9%. Again, this one is very status quo, but this is where we can see in full-time salaries, it's only up $2,000. So that is not where we're going to end up on their salary account. Patrol is where the bulk of their money is spent. The bulk of the employees are budgeted here. So full-time, minimal, actually no increase. In overtime, that is one that we always keep our eye on. It's up $32,000, which is 4.7%, but 25,000 of that is because they have an increase in the number of people that are due for their EMR recertifications. Absent that, it would only be about a $7,000 increase. Holiday pay is up 17.5%. Part of this is due to our addition of Juneteenth. We do, in the union contract, allow employees to either use holiday time as time off, or whatever they don't use, they can they would get paid for. So we assume
About
80% actually take the payout. Personal protective gear is where we have our ballistic vests, and that varies from year to year based on a replacement schedule. Records. Records is up $35,000. Main difference here is in their software account. They are up $22,000, which is 7.5%. And this is kind of centralized for all of their software systems. One of the drivers in this is the purchase of 7 additional flock cameras. Those are the license plate readers that are around town. And then they have consolidated their Axon contracts, which is their body cameras and in-car cameras, which created a savings and allows them to add an additional software called Power DMS. In information systems, they're up $4,800. They used to be able to get monitors and other IT equipment from Board of Ed, and that's no longer an option. Police professional standards is actually down 4.3%, and that is a result in salaries. They had some personnel move around, and it just so happens that the person who's now in the professional standards division is at a lower salary than their predecessor. Crossing guards, that one doesn't change much from year to year, so they're actually down $200. That's just based on the number of posts that need to get filled. Police communications, up $101,000 or 12.4%. This is our dispatching. You'll see a significant increase in their personnel accounts. That was due to settlement of the new, moving the telecommunicators out of the town hall union. They created their own union. We settled their contract in the spring of 2025, so that has a big impact on their personnel because we didn't have salary increases budgeted here due to vacancies. Up until now, we haven't had to transfer over. And the prior year and year-to-date numbers, those actuals in the personnel accounts are lower than we would otherwise expect because they have had historic vacancies. However, out of the 9 telecommunicator positions that we have, as of February 17th, we will have our 8th telecommunicator on staff, only have 1 vacancy. We did 1 recruiting round after their new contract, and it was very successful. We think a lot of that is attributed to them having their own contract, so potential applicants could go and see what exactly their working conditions would be.
And Jen, to add to that, we're currently in the works to fill in the 9th position. We had a former dispatcher who has reached out and is seeking some.
So we might be fully staffed soon.
Yes.
On that, just quickly, how are you staffed right now with patrol? Are you guys fully staffed?
Patrol?
Yeah, like where are your numbers right
We
now?
have 3 vacancies right now.
So you're at 49
And
or
we
52,
have a couple
right?
officers out on.
50. Oh, I thought it was 52.
It's 53.
53.
Oh,
We're at 50 right now.
so you're 50. Okay, okay, that's what I was curious. Thank you.
But you do have a few out on
Yep, we're pretty far along right
injury
now.
and-
Yeah, we have 1 out.
Right, okay.
Well, FMLA.
1 out injury, 1 pregnant.
Yep.
I think is that it?
No, I think we're missing someone.
And 1 is in the academy.
Yes, that's right.
So full-time and overtime are really impacted by the new contract. Holiday pay is impacted by the contract, and the new wage rates also impacted by Juneteenth. Unlike the police union contract, the telecommunicators get paid out for all of their holiday. They do not have the option to use it as time. Shift differential was increased in their contract, so that's up $15,000, and that could be a contributing factor to having some more applicants in the most recent recruiting effort. Also, I do want to, I didn't highlight it, but I want to point out and give credit to the thoroughness of the police department. In this telecommunications line, it's down $5,600, and in a budget this size, they have a lot of detail and a lot of justification, and some of it just gets lost in the shuffle and gets re-budgeted every year. And to Captain Mastriani's credit, he went through all of these details and said, are we actually spending this? And identified an item in here that was about $5,600 that kept getting budgeted, wasn't being spent. So that's just a testament to how thorough they were in their budget review.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Fleet services, this is up $5,000 or 4.6%. It's pretty stable. The only real change is they have a relatively new full-time mechanic due to a retirement a couple years ago, so he's still stepping, and as a result, it's a 4,600 of that 5,900 increase is due to the salary increase. Station operations is up 10%, and this is where some of what Sharon was talking about is coming into play. First, the full-time and the part-time, those are fairly new in their positions, so they are stepping. That's why you see a 5.9% and 6.3% increase on those positions. But then when we look down at facility repair and maintenance and equipment maintenance contract, that becomes Sharon's world. Facility repair and maintenance is up almost $16,000. As Sharon said, in fiscal 26, we've had about $25,000 of unanticipated repairs. So this is a more realistic budget after Sharon's review of the budget, or of the building and the issues that she's seen. For the equipment maintenance contract, Sharon, as she said, has been going through all the contracts. So there's some contractual changes that she thought was necessary, and that's driving some of this. And then she also added a contract for UPS battery service, and that's $6,300 of the $19,000 increase. The final division is animal control, and that is driven by a salary increase as well, $5,000. They have a newer animal control officer, so she is stepping. So $4,700 of that $5,000 increase is due to her salary increase. On the revenue side, they have minimal revenues. They take in about $47,000 per year. They are projecting a $1,400 change, but that's just some minor kind of immaterial adjustments in a couple of revenue lines. And we already did capital, so.
Any other
that's the
questions?
police department. Thank you.
Thank you, friends. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a couple of follow-ups from yesterday's conversation. We had discussed investment income that may have come from bond funds that we borrowed and had not yet spent down, so I did take a look at that. Year-to-date, July through January, we have earned $571,271 in interest on those bond funds. They are being spent down. In July, we earned $140,000. I think we had close to $38 million in the bank at that point. As of January, we earned $40,000 for that month because we've been drawing down, as HHR is the primary one that we borrowed in advance, and now those have been drawn down.
So Jen, in total, 750?
571 year to date.
Okay.
Yep. And in Joan's projections, she did not include anything for bond funds. That's something that, based on the Board of Finance's decision on how they want to size the issue in April, that can be recalculated if there's something where they're borrowing quite a bit in advance, but if it's something where we're just paying ourselves back,
Right.
there wouldn't be bond funds around to earn any interest. The other question from yesterday was, what is the balance in the Board of Finance capital reserve? And that is currently $452,000. So if we do need to go to that for Great Island, there's sufficient funds there. So budget summary. The ones that I have highlighted in yellow, we either haven't spoken about yet, or I think there's decision or discussion to be had. Those were the ones that I've heard throughout our process. So if you want to make an adjustment to interest income down to Joan's most recent projection, that would be a decrease of 600,000. As I said yesterday, based on the numbers, we looked at the senior center food program, that could go up 2,200. On the expense side, do we want to do the town-wide mailing? The full cost that Marley was able to calculate, we'd have to add about $6,300. Do we want to add anything for monuments and ceremonies, cemetery maintenance, because I did reduce their request based on prior year's actuals. And as we went through EMS, I did say that took a look, and we have a credit available for next year. That would bring down our CMed EMS by $6,758. One thing I just realized is that we did not go over emergency management capital. They have one request. It is for a light tower. I think the current one is 20 years old. They use this at emergencies, they use it at town functions, such as the fireworks. I think they may use it for elections sometimes to provide lighting. So yeah, it's approaching 20 years old. It gets a lot of use, so they are looking to replace that.
So Jen, on that, I noticed that when you asked how they got the number, they said they looked on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of typical practice?
For something like this, where there's a lot of options and it's not a piece of specialty equipment, yeah, that would be an acceptable way to project what their budget would need to be. If it was more specialized or required combination of things, we would want them to speak to a vendor, but something like this, that would be fine.
Okay.
So, that being said, we also, we have discussed, yesterday, I told you that we had to add HHR back onto our LAP policy. So the impact in the sewer and parking operations is actually no impact on their total budget because they each have kind of a balancer. In the sewer fund, it's that contribution to fund balance that we talked about, and in the parking operations fund, it's the transfer to the capital. We're required to do a minimum 20% of gross revenues, but we do use that as a balancer for the budget, and at times it gets budgeted as more than that. So we could offset the LAP increase by reducing the fund balance contribution in the sewer fund and the transfer to capital in the parking fund. So is there anything you would like to discuss or add?
So the Board of Finance has got an internal model where they look pretty closely at these interest income budgets. The only reason I might suggest leaving this as we've proposed here is that the interest rate picture might change between now and when the Board of Finance picks this up over the next 8 weeks. And I would say sort of any change in that budget probably more smartly comes from them. We can make an adjustment now. And I don't know what to tell you. So I think leaving the $600,000 change like you have it here, leave it like that, and
Bring
let's
it
move
down
on.
to Joan's most
Bring it
recent
down to
projection.
Joan's budget and let the Board of Finance pick it up from there. And I'm fine with the other changes. I mean, the one thing on monuments and ceremonies, how much was the cut that you put in?
4,500.
4,500?
Yeah, and I did reach out to the chair, and it's for increase in landscaping costs and headstone repairs, so.
As
We have a
matter
lot of cemeteries in this town.
We have quite a few
work hard.
cemeteries. As a matter of dignity, I think that's kind of important.
100%,
So I'd vote that we
You wanna
put
put that
that
back
back. Yeah.
please.
Do we want to give post 53 the full amount that they're asking for?
So in our discussions with them, and then subsequently, we discussed, well, sort of, A, is this the right thing to do? My personal conclusion, after having sat with them a couple of times, read through the proposals, followed up with questions and thought about it, I think it is reasonable for us to now go into a mode where we're supplying a grant to them. What I like about this grant is that it is very narrowly tailored to just these 4 people. And as I said during the discussion, I'd want a grant agreement that sort of ring fences that and gives us a decision-making role if they're going to expand the number of personnel or make significant changes in salary. In terms of timing of the grant, one thing we talked about is whether we would consider layering this in. So in other words, year 1 of the grant, we would do half of what they've requested, and then year 2 kind of ramp it all the way up. I don't think that's an unreasonable approach. We could consider something like that. We just have to be eyes open that in the next year there's an automatic increase to cover the second half of that grant, and we'd be obligated to do that going forward. I do think that the size of the endowment as they communicated to us doesn't quite have the relevance to this decision as you might think, despite the fact that it's $10 million. We did have discussions with them about the building, and it's clear they're gonna have to replace that building to get it to the standards that they needed. As I said, it's pretty old and doesn't really have all the capability that they have. Thankfully, it's not in as bad a shape as the much newer police department building, and I'll behave from this point. But the endowment and their fundraising capacity really is going to be tied up supporting that effort in the next few years. And so I'm okay with the grant. I do think we ought to just make sure we do the annual review process, kind of like you said, and and you, Mike, where we bring them in, and it's not just the operating budget, it's like we do for the library. We're looking at the dividing line between operating and grant money, although it's pretty clear in this particular case. The performance of the fund, fundraising itself, is the fact that we're providing this grant to cover these individuals cannibalizing any of their fundraising, which would also not be good. And I'd just stress to the general public watching, this remains a crown jewel of the town and something that I'd encourage everybody to support to the extent that we are providing a town grant. The purpose of that is to create an additional opportunity to keep this service best in class. And that does not in any way, and should not in any way, decrease the importance of fundraising or the quality of this as a destination for your philanthropy. So,
We have made a decision, obviously, very clearly, we've supported the fire departments and the commission, and it's so important, we need these emergency services. And we haven't supported them financially in that manner. And if we didn't have them, we would be
bad.
Well, we would be paying a significant portion.
Yeah. Just like
or, either having our own, paying at Stanford or Norwalk. So I feel that it's the right thing to do.
Yep, I agree. Monica?
I was thinking about the cannibalization, and I think ringing this onto just the salaries, I really like that idea. And I like that, I would like not to have mission creep on that, because it gives us an idea of the escalation going forward.
More predictable.
Yeah, but with all that said, I think that people will still continue to, I give to Post 53, and luckily I've never needed to use it. But I think people will continue, and I think they'll step up for the building. But at this point, I would suggest funding the entire amount. I would be okay with that.
Marcy?
Yeah, I am too.
Mike?
Okay.
All right. Let's
You're
fund the full
sweet.
amount.
All right. There were position requests, so you have the full-time deputy fire marshal that would start in January per my budget. Part-time in the assessor, which is anticipated to bring in about 4 times the cost of it as additional tax revenue. And then the senior center part-time for about $15,000, $16,000 to provide that desk coverage instead of having to rely on volunteers and having some gaps in that time.
I'm okay with all those positions. We've talked about them.
The only other idea I had is there was the request for the emergency management, and you punted that.
Mm-hmm.
With some of these new hires, is there an opportunity to have them
That's what I was
as the
wondering.
backup? I mean, you're talking a fire marshal.
So
I don't think the skill is that different.
we have talked about that, myself, HR, and the emergency management director, as well as fire marshal. Part of that becomes an issue. The deputy fire marshals are in the town hall union. And so that complicates things a little bit. And so we're trying to find a non-union position that might be willing or able to do this, have the right skills. The challenge is the union contract. It's not ruled out. It's a possibility, but it's not our easiest route.
Okay.
What else?
I can't think of much. I have to compliment the departments, the fire departments. They all did a great job. As I was going through my review, I felt like I wasn't cutting enough. Like I expected the number to be more, but there's nothing there. I think their requested additions absolutely make sense. I think they all did a fantastic job, and it's a very lean budget.
Yeah, I would do the same comment. All the department heads really took a careful look at this, and this was done with a fine scalpel. Just a shout out also to Josh Kaufman, our new Director of Finance. This spreadsheet is a big improvement and worked really well, so thank you for that. And Jennifer, it all reports into you, and so you had help. I get that it was a team effort, but somebody was in charge of the team, and that was you.
Yes,
So
thank
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what do we need to do next?
I just want one question.
Please.
Where are we on the PD HVAC or whatever are we holding on that, or are we including it?
I think the decision was that we were gonna leave it as presented in my budget, allow Sharon to go back and work on stuff. If we have new information at Board of Finance, we can make some changes there, or at
Change it,
RTM.
okay.
That was
Yeah,
my understanding.
and I think the logic for that is, look, if we don't do a study that gives us a perspective as to whether we should do something drastic, to use a word, then we're gonna make these investments.
Right.
And so I would just leave it alone and let that study dictate whether we ought to consider a different course of action. It also gives us a chance to assemble a group of people, i.e. you and Board of Finance and others. You guys ought to be in that presentation where we could talk about it and say, all right, what are we seeing, and importantly, what questions do you have? So, what else?
Like a walking tour of the police department, I think.
You and your walking
I'll
tour.
put that on the list.
So Marcy is just trying to get in her steps.
Put in a
You guys
hard
have to
hat.
walk
You
over
wear
there.
a hard
Marcy
hat
just
or
wants
something.
field trips.
She wants field trips,
Crossing
so.
the fire department is a lot more fun.
I don't know, it sounds like this
fire
department, this police department is
And you should do this summer, too.
Exactly. What's next?
Up next is your vote. If my pen would work.
She's got a resolution prepped.
I do, it's a fill in the blank.
Hey, Jen, on
And you
the,
made one change, and I have to rewrite a couple numbers. Yes.
on the Board of Finance contingency, going back to the Great Island project, there are soft costs that we are definitely going to incur. So we have a 175 in there,
No, but it's-
452.
but that
It's-
balance,
It's the capital contingency, not the other contingency. That was my mistake from yesterday.
Yeah.
okay.
So there's plenty of money in there to cover
Okay.
that. Great question, and I missed that yesterday.
So on your resolution, there's two things that you are, several numbers, but conceptually two things that you're approving. You're approving the budget, but you're also approving the 6-year capital plan. And that is a 6, even though it doesn't really look like it. So the 6-year capital plan is our big capital file. So just to be really clear on what we're approving, it's all the detail that we went over for the departments, all of their requests. I don't think we made any capital changes.
But the 6-year plan doesn't, we're not
You're not, so.
forced, right? Every year we,
Right, what you are
Okay.
adopting.
Right.
Or recommending
Right.
to fund is the first year of the capital
Right,
plan.
right.
That's $5.4 million.
Right.
We are gonna bring through, because it's off cycle, but we talked about it in the budget, the 2 fire engines and the harbor dredging, because those rise to the level of bonding. What you are approving is the plan for the out years. It does not commit you to it.
Correct.
It does not lock us into anything, but it is important that we approve the plan because it is a necessary requirement to receive our LoCIP funding.
Yep.
Yep. All right, I will do a quick reading of our resolution. Resolution, fiscal year 2026-27 budget. Whereas the Board of Selectmen have reviewed and evaluated the town administrator's proposed budget for fiscal year 2026-2027 and the 6-year capital plan, and whereas following completion of this review, a number of changes and modifications have been made to the budget. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Selectmen hereby approve the modified annual budget for 2026-27 and the 6-year capital plan. Be it further resolved that the 2026-27 budget and 6-year capital plan be submitted to the Board of Finance for their consideration. The general fund, including the general operating fund of $44,975,348, debt service of $18,192,295, for a total general fund budget of $63,167,643. Other funds include the sewer operating fund of $5,418,438, the parking operating fund of $937,000, the recreation programs fund of $1,608,000, the capital fund of $5,362,938, the sewer capital fund of $310,000, the the Parking Capital Fund of $75,000, and the Great Island Management Fund of $292,518. May I get a motion, could I call for a motion to approve that resolution and recommend it to the Board of Finance? Monica moves, Sarah seconds, all in favor? Thank you.
John, can I make one other comment? No matter
Yeah.
how much, John, you set the standard for reading that, because no matter how Jim Palin or I try to do it, we have still not equaled you.
Thank you. I had no charge for that service. Half offered free. Jennifer, do we have anything else we need to cover?
We do not.
Okay, friends, thank you very much to everybody. I appreciate it. Could I get a motion to adjourn? Mike moves, Marcy seconds, all in favor?
Great job, Jen.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yes, Jen, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Josh.